All right, let's jump right into this explainer. We're going to unpack exactly what the Bank of Japan's massive decision to raise interest rates means for your money, and, spoiler alert, why you really don't need to panic. If you've been anywhere near social media lately, you've probably seen everyone freaking out, right? People are asking, is my variable rate mortgage doomed, or are we getting crushed by a strong yen and a collapsing stock market? Well, today, we are clearing the air. We're going to look at the actual data and figure out exactly how to navigate this brand new era of money. We've got a super packed agenda for you today. We're covering the 1% reality, stocks, currency, cash, mortgages, and finally, a concrete action plan for your investments. Starting right off with Section 1, the 1% rate reality. Talk about absolute shock value. 31 years. That's how long it's been since Japan's policy rate hit 1%. I mean, we literally have to rewind all the way back to 1995. Think about it. Hideo Nomo was throwing his tornado pitch in the majors. Over 3 decades of ultra-low rates are just suddenly over. But here's the wild part. On the exact day of this historic hike, the Nikkei surged right past the 70,000 milestone. That totally flips the traditional panic narrative on its head, doesn't it? Okay, so think of interest rates as the water temperature of the entire economy. We've been soaking in this cozy, lukewarm bath of 0 or even negative interest rates for so long that our bodies are completely used to it. In that bath, money is super easy to borrow, struggling companies can just float by, and people take on these massive mortgages. Now, the BoJ is simply turning the dial back to a normal room temperature. But because we've been sitting in that lukewarm water for over 30 years, normal? Well, it feels absolutely freezing right now. Context is everything, though. While 1% feels like a monumental historic leap domestically here in Japan, on a global scale, Japan is still very much a low interest rate country compared to the rest of the G7. You've got the US and UK hanging out in the 3 to 4% range, while Canada and the Eurozone are sitting in the 2s. So we really need to separate our local sticker shock from the broader global reality. Moving on to Section 2, stocks, gravity versus engines. So why didn't the market completely crash? Old school textbook theory is pretty straightforward. Higher interest rates make borrowing way more expensive for companies. Building factories, hiring, doing R&D, it all costs more. That's supposed to cool the economy and absolutely crush stock prices. But what we're actually seeing is a totally different story. Since the BoJ started hiking, both Japanese and US stocks have just kept climbing. Why? Because incredibly strong corporate earnings, and specifically the ability for these companies to raise prices, their pricing power, are just bulldozing right over that old textbook logic. I absolutely love this analogy. If interest rates are like gravity pulling down on the market, then companies with incredibly strong engines are just going to keep flying right through it. And today's engines are massive. Think about the explosive demand for AI, semiconductors, and companies with products so essential they can raise prices and not lose a single customer. The gravity of a 1% rate hike is nowhere near enough to ground an airplane equipped with engines that powerful. This new era heavily rewards companies with real, undeniable earning power. Section 3, currency, the weak yen. Now, how does all this play into the totally confusing currency market? Again, the textbooks tell us that raising rates should make your currency stronger, so why on earth is the yen still so weak? Well, it comes down to these massive structural yen selling pressures. First, like we just talked about, the interest rate gap with the US is still huge, so money naturally flows over to the higher yielding dollar. Second, there's what we call the digital deficit. Every single day, Japan is paying foreign tech giants for smartphones, cloud servers, streaming, AI. That creates this relentless, invisible selling of the yen. And third, Japanese NISA investors are taking trillions of yen every year and converting it to buy global index funds like the S&P 500. With structural forces that heavy, the yen isn't going to magically surge just because of a minor BoJ hike. Let's move to Section 4, cash, the leaky bucket. All right, we've tackled the macro stuff, but let's talk about the real, silent danger to your personal wallet. So many people think just holding cash is the safest bet. But right now, pure cash is literally a leaky bucket. Think about it like this. The BoJ hikes rates, maybe your bank deposit bumps up to a tiny 0.2%. But inflation here is running at 2 to 3%. So sure, the actual number of bills in your wallet isn't changing, but what that money can actually buy is silently leaking away every single day. A 100 yen burger suddenly costs 110 yen. If you just leave all your money sitting in a bank account, you are practically guaranteeing a massive loss of your purchasing power over time. Section 5, mortgages, the real impact. Okay, let's dive into the thing keeping about 80% of homeowners awake at night: variable rate mortgages. When short-term rates go up, variable rates follow right behind them. Let's look at the actual math on a 30 million yen mortgage over 30 years, because it's pretty terrifying. At a 0.5% rate, your total lifetime interest is roughly 2.3 million yen. Bump that rate to 1%, and your total interest doubles to 4.7 million yen. And if we ever hit a 2% rate, you're shelling out yearly 10 million yen just in interest. So while your monthly payment might barely budge at first, the total amount of wealth being quietly drained out of your pocket over your lifetime balloons by millions. Now, take a deep breath. Please, whatever you do, do not panic. Panic is how we make terrible financial decisions. Instead, you need to jump on these 3 steps immediately. Step 1, dig out your contract and check for the 5-year rule. That's what keeps your monthly payment locked for 5 years, even when rates rise. Also, check for the 125% rule, which strictly caps any payment increase at 1.25 times your old payment. These are great shock absorbers, but keep in mind, they don't magically erase the extra interest, they just delay it. Step 2, run a simulation on your exact loan so you know your total interest under higher rates. And step 3, take a hard look at your emergency cash reserves before you make any sudden moves. And finally, Section 6, Action, NISA versus prepayment. This leads us right to the ultimate kitchen table debate. If you're lucky enough to have a chunk of extra cash, let's say 3 million yen, do you prepay that mortgage or do you throw it into your NISA account? Well, comparing the two gives us a perfect look at the trade-offs. Prepaying your mortgage is a guaranteed, completely tax-free return equal to your interest rate. If your rate is 2%, prepaying is exactly like getting a guaranteed 2% return, which is fantastic for zero risk. On the flip side, putting that cash into a NISA index fund gives you a much higher historical expectation of 5 to 7%. But, and this is a massive but, it brings market volatility to the table. It could easily tank 30% in a single year before bouncing back. So, how do you actually make the call? Here's a handy decision matrix for you. You really want to prioritize NISA if your mortgage rate is still cruising low around 1%, you've got a solid 10 plus years to ride out the market roller coaster, and your emergency fund is bulletproof. On the other hand, you should seriously look at prepaying your mortgage if your rate is creeping up toward that 2% mark, if you've got huge upcoming expenses like college tuition, or honestly, if just the thought of being in debt keeps you up at night. But here is the absolute golden rule. You do not have to treat this like an all-or-nothing binary choice. If you have 3 million yen, keep 1 million for emergencies, put 1 million into NISA, and use the last million to prepay the mortgage. Mixing it up is the smartest way to protect your household. That matrix actually highlights the core philosophy you absolutely need to adopt right now. It's all about allocating your funds based entirely on their time horizon. Cash you might need within the next year, that goes straight in the bank. Yeah, it's the leaky bucket, we know, but it is liquid and totally safe from a market crash. Cash you need in 1 to 5 years? Look at bonds or higher yield term deposits for that. And the money you are definitely not touching for over 10 years, that belongs in wealth-building vehicles like NISA and global index funds so it can actually outrun inflation. At the end of the day, we've got to reframe how we look at this. Returning to a 1% interest rate is not a disaster. We're just finally stepping out of that stagnant, lukewarm bath. This is a dynamic, fully functioning economic era now, and it incredibly rewards people who simply pay attention. It rewards you for actively managing your cash, really understanding the math behind your mortgage, and strategically spreading out your investments. Honestly, the only folks who are going to truly suffer in this new landscape are the ones who just sit back, do absolutely nothing, and leave their entire life savings sitting in cash. So, having walked through exactly how these rate changes ripple through everything from global stocks right down to your monthly mortgage payment, I want to leave you with one really vital question. Where is your money sleeping tonight? Is it stuck in a leaky bucket, losing value by the minute? Or is it out there working incredibly hard to build your future? Make those informed choices starting today. Thanks so much for diving into this explainer with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.